off?
Yeah, we're at 4 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. Got a few here, so welcome everyone. This is our second monthly Let's Talk Drones. We bring where we're trying to bring partners in the industry together with pilots so that we can discuss current topics and issues that we hope that the group will be able to participate in, that we can answer. I'd like everyone to begin with your microphones muted. Most of you have. Video, if we start seeing some lag, we'll ask people to turn off their video. I'll send a private chat out to you to do so. I know that reception can be difficult for some people. Please, if you have questions, post those to chat, and we will do our best to get those addressed during our discussion today. And if you will, include your email address in the event that we don't get to it, that we could follow up with you offline with answers, because sometimes we don't have the answer with us in our brains today. So, but we'll do our best to get that to you. As always, we encourage you to join AUVSI if you've not already done so. If you're in the North Carolina area, please assign it to our North Carolina chapter. We have our guests and friends from Texas in the Lone Star chapter. If you're in that region and you're not a member, please sign up and associate yourselves with their chapter. We also want to recognize Marion McNabb and DroneLife. I'll throw her background up for her, who has been working with us for the last few months. DroneLife has been providing UAS industry news, product releases, and all other information regarding commercial drone ops to partners, pilots of the community. So please consider registering for their new newsletter at dronelife.com to stay up to date. And Miriam will be kicking off later our directed discussion with one of the topics that she has been monitoring since our last episode. And last but not least, before we get going with our Lone Star partners, you can find our videos on the UAVSI North Carolina YouTube channel. Take us a few days to get it edited, but we'll have that up for you for your viewing for those who would like to go back and hear some of the comments. And first of all, we'll introduce Adrian Doko from AUVSI Lone Star. He is the CEO of Imperial Aerial and the president of that chapter, and he's going to introduce his other guests as we get going. So handing over to Adrian.
Thanks again, Bill. Yes, I want to introduce Jennifer Birdsong. She's our educational and technology ninja here at the Lone Star chapter. And then we also have Jonathan Jacobs joining us, one of Martin UAV's lead pilots. He's also the founder and CEO of Drone Academy. And I want to commend the North Carolina chapter on their exponential growth for this past year. Actually, our newest chapter in the AUVSI lineup. So congratulations on a job well done so far. All right, well, with that being said, let's start this topics. Anyone want to kick it off? Darshan?
Sure. So I'll, do a quick welcome also to everyone. Those who have been there in the last session. I've seen this is a very informal session, and we try to keep the questions going, and we always are open to anything you all want to discuss about. So if we have a certain question and if we go off topic, that's fine. That's the main thing about here, is to try and answer your questions, try to discuss about it. We try to keep this we try to keep the topics for short time and then move to the next topic. So if there is a specific focus, and if any of the any of our expert panelists are really answering those questions to what you all are expecting, and you want to know more, you can always reach out to them directly. You will have their information and all. They will have their emails, everything given, so you can always reach out. But what the plan for today is, so first of all, just do a quick introduction for our North Carolina team. So I'm Darshan, the president of AUVSI North Carolina. I have you already saw Bill. I have Paul Rossi, Nicole, and Riley from the North Carolina team. We have other people from our team that are not there today, but that's our team, and we are here to help out. If you're in North Carolina, you have any questions, we are always here to help out. So the format, how we keep this is generally we open it up with news that what's happening in the last 1 month since we had our last Let's Talk Drone. So Miriam will kick off with reading of the news and what she's heard about it, what's her opinion about it, and then we start discussing as a team. Both now we have Lone Star ourselves here, but also if you all at any point have some comments or some other information that we don't have, or if we are saying something wrong, just you can raise your hands. There's option to raise your hands, and we'll let you switch on your mic and even video if you want, and we can talk about it. So just remember, it's an informal. We are not talking too serious stuff. We want to keep it fun. So let me kick it off that way, and let me pass it on to Miriam. It's all yours.
Thanks. Okay, so I have a few topics that I thought would be fun to talk about today. They definitely a lot of scope for different expert opinions to come in here. So the topic of the month, I would have to say the most stories that we published all of this month were about drone delivery. And that started in the very beginning of the month with DroneUp publishing their paper on a study that they did, testing that they did on what you can do for drone delivery within the existing rules of Part 107. So that's really kind of an interesting thing. Let's clarify Part 107 and let's see exactly what kind of drone delivery we can do without a waiver or without special permission. But then there was also, there was COVID related drone delivery. That's still a big topic. There were library books. There was beer being delivered. That was actually quite interesting because I didn't realize that a little quadcopter could carry a whole 6-pack without dropping it, but apparently they can. I saw it on video. And to sort of end the month, actually, just this week, I published a guest op-ed by a couple of humanitarians, Village Reach and Gates Foundation, who said, okay, guys, calm down. We've seen all these great headlines everywhere in the mass media about drone delivery and COVID-19, but I'm not seeing any drones. There's more to it. And they were talking about issues like training a local workforce and not just having, a couple huge companies, but allowing sort of local providers to come in and setting up those standards so that you can really implement drone delivery in communities. So I would say that was kind of the big topic of June. When I counted up all the stories that we wrote, we published at least 10 to 15 a week, and most of them were on, a lot of them were on drone delivery. So do you want to go on to number 2, or do you want to stop on that one?
No, I think I'll want to start off that because we've been part of the drone delivery initiative in North Carolina with the IPP. So one of the focus there to look at, the focus of IPP was to create these opportunities. So one of this was that how state, local, and tribal government can regulate the airspace below 400 feet. But the other two are where this closely aligns. One is how innovative technologies can be integrated into operations, like your drone delivery, like public safety operations, and you have there was some unique cases of remotely flying drones and stuff. These are use cases. Yes, the companies that are mainly running this could be bigger companies, but through this, the research, the data that comes out. The part 3 of the IPP's focus was how do we let regular people, regular companies continue these operations in a day-to-day basis. So if there's a lot of discussions about drone delivery right now, that's because that's because things are moving. If 3 years back we talked about drone delivery, half of the people here would say you're joking, right? These small drones lifting stuff. So in that 3 years back, if we talked about drone delivery, it would have been more like, oh yeah, let's see how it goes. But now it's like, okay, we know it's going to, it's possible. We know that these drones are able to lift something. Now what is restricting us is the regulatory side of this. So these discussions do make an impact. in changing the way things are done. And DroneUp is a great example. DroneUp is a service provider, a national service provider. If they are able to do a drone delivery type of operation, this gives opportunity for any company that's interested to take an effort. It's not easy. It's not like just going and saying, I want to do drone delivery, I have a drone. You have to go through the process. So it's changing. To see a routine drone delivery, it might take anything, a year or two more. COVID-19 can, excite people and say, okay, we are motivated to do this, but it's not like by end of this year, we're going to see hundreds and thousands of operations taking place, because that's not, there isn't enough safety data to prove all that. So I would say 2 years later, if we have the discussion, we'll be like, okay, drone delivery is so common. Let's talk about something else. So it's good to see this discussion, but I think beyond that, the industry still has a little bit of work to do.
I'd say keep an eye on North Carolina. If you look right now, you've got Zipline, who's got open positions for pilots. They're one thing they're looking at though is that you have that commercial or private pilot certificate, and they're also hiring for UAV maintenance technicians, looking for folks with that pilot certificate right here in North Carolina with their operations. A company, Flytrex, who is doing things under Part 107, over a year ago in North Dakota, they're doing things here in North Carolina. So keep an eye, a close eye, because those sustainable operations are here and more of them are coming. Yes, these drones can carry a 6-pack of beer, but when it comes to liability and sustainability for some smaller businesses, I just don't think that's an answer.
And I think Paul brings up actually a really great point, which is this idea of if you think about somebody like UPS, any very, very large shipping enterprise like that, if they need 1,000 truck drivers with a truck driving license, they can probably get that pretty quick. But it's not as easy to find that many trained and licensed drone pilots. And so, the educational things and setting the standards so that you can put people through the appropriate training and stuff is really important.
That's true. And just to mention to everyone on the group that we will be going through these news, and then we'll be going through open questions and everything. So if you're not answering some questions, that's because we are going to push it for after this segment gets over. Miriam, we can go to the next news
All right. Yeah. And this will go quickly. So the second one is the drone industry itself. So I think because of COVID and because there was questions about what's the investment climate like now, we've gotten a lot of research in this month on what the drone industry is looking like, not kind of in the immediate, but over the next short term. And by short term, I mean like 4 years. So 4 or 5 years. And I think there's really reason to be optimistic. The first research story that came in was that agriculture market predictions were, going to be 5 billion by 2025. Then I get in research from Drone Industry Insights over in Europe, who I think do a really good data-driven job. And they say, yeah, but agriculture is not even like close to the biggest sector. It's energy and then, transportation. So I think what we're seeing, definitely hopeful news, like there is investment there. It's not as hyped up, and there's not, investors are not throwing money at drone companies anymore. But the industrial clients, the enterprise clients, they might have been slowed down by COVID, but they are still heavily investing in drone programs. It's just proof that the return on investment is there. So for energy, for transportation, now that was a kind of a new one for me. We're not just talking about the hot new thing, that EHing is getting new investment and things like that. Although that's fun to think about, but really we're looking at like bread and butter, industrial inspections, long-term road inspections, infrastructure inspections, all of that. So that was number 2 on my topic list.
And I think, Adrian, I would like you to think about this. So in North Carolina, I think agriculture, for us, agriculture kicked off the industry in a way, because I remember when I was in 2014 getting in the drone side, most of our operations were using fixed wings, and it was more of crop studies and water level in these crops that it went to industrial applications. What's your take in that in Texas?
Yeah, a lot of people to hype agriculture up. We're not seeing that response in the industry. They're sticking to their guns with their pipers and crop dusters. We did have a slight surge in agriculture, whether it be crop monitoring or irrigation. But I mean, I have personal friends that have these drones that can either monitor crops and irrigate, and we haven't seen an increase. Although a lot of people have spoken on agriculture is the next gold rush, we just haven't seen it here yet. Might be out in North Carolina or California, but not really happening here in Texas.
It's funny when you say that, because the gold rush, as such, according to what I was aware about, was the whole drone industry kicked off because of agricultural applications, in a way. And when agricultural applications did not, I forget the name of the gentleman, but he was there on the last session, and he was mentioning about crop sprayer, which I don't know if he's there. If he's there, just give me a shout out. I would like to talk, if you would like to talk about it. But the thing is, the crop sprayer, that is something, was in North Carolina. We were able to do the first operations under NCDOT, but it took us, it was a DJI Agris. It took us close to 3 to 4 years to get that approval done, because first of all, it was federal lands. We were spraying for the invasive species there, and we needed agricultural permit, crops, chemical carrying permit. We need the drone training. Altogether, it took 3 to 4 years. But now what I heard is that because of Department of Interior shutting down the program, because holding on the program because of the Chinese drones thing, that has affected the crop spraying industry in a big way, because that was the product that used to come from there. So I don't know if about any US companies that are in the drone spraying. Is anyone aware about it in the audience? If you're aware about any US based companies?
My understanding with that in the US is that it's problematic for a couple of reasons. In Europe, certainly they do a little more with agriculture, because BVBOS flight is a big factor in sort of large industrial farming. But also, I think that you get a whole nother layer of regulations when you're trying to develop an aircraft that sprays a chemical. So you have to develop an aircraft and get that approved is one whole big effort. But then to get approval to spray chemicals is a whole nother one.
Isn't it also the IPP, the Florida IPP? Their focus was mosquito, spraying for mosquito and stuff.
Yep.
I think that did not kick off the way they expected, and they dropped out of the IPP. But there could have been great results coming out of that if that had gone further.
Yeah.
Plus the layer has chemical certification, so you'll need to have that available in most cases.
Yeah.
And Miriam, before we go ahead, I think you mentioned about energy and the whole industry kicking. So I think I just take this opportunity. Mark, you're online. I can see you. Do you want to mention about what you're doing this week, the event that is coming up, and why it's interesting for folks?
Yeah, hi Darshan. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to share a little bit about the event, and hi to everybody out there. Happy Friday. Hope everybody's having a good day. My name is Mark Flam. I'm the Enterprise Sales and Support Manager at DJI. At DSLR Pros. I've been in the commercial drone industry since 2014 when I started at DJI as their enterprise support manager. A little bit about DSLR Pros real quickly. We were established in 2012 and have been assisting public safety agencies and industrial and agricultural service providers to launch and scale their own drone programs. We're an authorized DJI FLIR and MicaSense dealership and are located in Southern California. So yeah, we have a webinar coming up on Wednesday. So on that note, I'll briefly introduce it. We're going to have experts like Mike Amati from Jinko Solar, Derek Ward, a lead UAS pilot from a major fire department, as well as Darshan, are going to join in and explain the various ways organizations are using unmanned technology to reduce risk and improve efficiency for industrial inspection. We're going to be focused mainly on the DJI Matrice 300 RTK and the H-20T, the new payload that came out. But one thing that we're going to get into as well is a little bit about how this aircraft is making these critical inspections more accessible. We're relying less on the pilot to successfully navigate a complex environment repeatedly and more on smart AI features. So for challenging inspections, a skilled pilot or a team familiar with that asset could come in and perform the initial inspection. And then once that initial flight is completed and the flight path and the data set have been verified, that mission can be automatically repeated by a less skilled operator with less risk and greater efficiencies. So this is just some of the stuff that we're going to get into during Wednesday's webinar. I mean, one thing I will say is I love flying drones. I know everybody out there loves flying drones, but the goal is for the drone to do the complex work, not necessarily the pilot. And I'm looking forward to getting to this topic and other topics with Darshan and the other experts. And again, that's next Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 11 a.m. Pacific Time. And I'll go ahead and share that link in the chat here. You can also find the link on the AUVSI North Carolina Facebook page or the DSLR Pros Facebook page. So yeah, if you could take a minute and register for that webinar if you're interested, I hope to see some of you guys over there. And thanks again, Darshan, for having me on here today.
Thanks, Mark. So
Yeah.
he's going to be sharing the link, and you can register for it. Right now, everyone's going virtual, so it's important to stay connected, find unique topics that you don't actually get to hear before. Really, we are in a very it's crazy time, but we are also in a very good time that I've seen folks who wouldn't get all this information without attending $100,000 conferences. Are now getting it virtually for free. So, this really makes a big difference. Use this opportunity. We don't know how long it's going to be once the industry starts hopefully getting back to somewhere normal. A lot of these knowledge will again get, be in conferences where you have to pay X number of dollars. So try and connect with all those folks. Miriam.
Well,
Yeah.
Darshan, just to add on there, if I can, to pile on to what you're saying, this is the 5th webinar we've done since the launch of the Matrice 300. That's like 5 webinars in a 2-month span. This is only possible because we are not able to go out and do the in-person training that we would normally do and that we would normally charge for. I've done 5 webinars that I would not have otherwise been able to do. So I strongly agree with what you're saying. And for the audience out there, now is the time, because when things open up, we won't be able to continue to churn out this content at the same rate because we'll be back to in-person training. So yeah, now is a really great time where we're just making it available for free, and DSLR Pros isn't the only dealer doing that. I see a lot of partners out there doing that. And honestly, that's one thing that I love about what you've set up over here, Darshan, about Let's Talk Drones, bringing experts together to share valuable knowledge. That's how the whole industry grows. So, kudos to you and to AUVSI for setting this platform up.
Thank you. Miriam, it's all yours.
Let me sum up a couple of comments in the
Yeah.
chat. I think we've addressed a few of them, but Jared asked, is drone delivery a novelty? And I think that really comes down to right now, the regulations really prevent a mainstream use case right now. Until UTM is in effect and remote ID, I don't think drone delivery on the smaller scale is going to be very practical to use, for us to base a business on. And that's still potentially, I think they're saying, remote ID at the end of this year might be when it goes into effect, and who knows what the countersuits may be for that. UTM, I'm not really seeing a great timeline that really says that that's going to be a 2021 or not, but I think those two pieces have to fall into play before you get into drone delivery as a whole, and someone could always disagree with me on that. The other couple of comments here is about size of drones. I think that really comes into play as to what your payload's going to be for delivery too. So, and I think that's it basically on that topic. We had a few other questions in terms of different platforms for UAS. I think we can hold that one off, and we'll definitely answer it today. But I think we'll move on to I think we have one more from Miriam. Is that right?
Yeah. Can I respectfully disagree? And I do
Okay.
so respectfully.
Sure,
You
absolutely.
wouldn't believe the emails I get. Miriam, you could not be more wrong. I have teenagers. I don't need you to tell me that. So there was one thing that I think is different about drone delivery that makes it a little bit more immediate, and that's indoor drone delivery, like warehousing stuff is actually, I think, ready to get very big, and it is hard to find trained pilots. You still need trained pilots, so that'll be an interesting thing to watch, because that doesn't rely quite as much on the regulations. Anyway, okay.
And with drone deliveries, food deserts, so populations that are outside of that 2-mile radius from supermarkets and food sources, that's kind of definitely not, more or less a lesson of a novelty.
Okay. So the last kind of interesting topic, and there's two, but we'll sort of combine them. So everybody's always interested in what the FAA is doing for obvious reasons. And this month, the FAA Drone Advisory Committee got together. So there were 2 task forces that reported at that drone advisory meeting. There was the UTM task force and the safety culture task force. And those are both kind of interesting topics. Now, with the UTM task force, I'm not going to kind of go deep into what happened, but the point that was my takeaway was, this is really still very early stage, because when you looked at what the task force was saying, and they had done some great work, they had thought very, very hard about this. They had come up with a list of things that the entire task force agreed upon. And then they had come up with a much longer list of things that really required everybody to dive in more. And those are very tough, complex issues. What is the role of manned pilots in UTM development? What is the role of unmanned pilots in UTM development? Who should be able to see what's in the air? How much should they be able to see? There are very complex, deep issues that need to be fleshed out by, and everybody has to kind of come to an agreement on them. It's community members, and it's aviation officials, and it's the manned aircraft community, and it's the unmanned aircraft community. And so that was kind of my takeaway on that is, we have a lot of work to do. This is not just a technology problem. Whoops. Sorry, someone's not going to just, sort of invent a piece of software that's going to fix this for us. So got so excited that I dropped my computer. And the next thing was the Safety Culture Committee. So that's kind of an interesting topic, especially for all of you in AUVSI, because it really talks about how, unfortunately, as a journalist, I say it all the time, the one idiot out of a million pilots, gets all of the headlines, and the 999,000 who are just doing their job safely and reasonably don't. So that's kind of an interesting thing, and I think that's so much a role of AUVSI, is just making sure that nobody tries to get into a helicopter and just fly it without a license, but people do that with drones. So there's got to be some sort of building of a culture. So that was the FAA's Drone Advisory Committee. And following on that was, I got a few calls this month. It was kind of interesting, is that the UTM providers are kind of coming out now and saying, we're on the team of people developing this UTM technology, and they're ready to kind of let the public know about this. And I think that speaks to the fact that even though there is a long way to go with UTM, there are going to be some apps available to help out pilots and operators coming down the pike reasonably soon. So I actually had the opportunity to talk to Wing this month, and there are a lot of other providers out there now sort of starting to say, hey, we just wanted to let you know that we're working on this too. And I think that's really good news for our operators and for commercial operations, because I think it means that there are going to be some useful apps coming down the line. You know, Lance was kind of the first step, and that was great. But I think that there are going to be some tools available.
I think Adrian unmuted, so Adrian, you wanted to talk about it?
Yeah, so I was fortunate enough to late last year to go to Norway, where UTM went live, actually, the first UTM in the world. And Altitude Angel had a huge part in playing that. So Altitude Angel is based out of the UK. And for those of you that are not aware, UTM is just unmanned traffic management, right? So anything under 400 or 500 feet would be monitored. And this is where remote ID plays a crucial role. But apparently out in Norway, they have implemented UTM. And this is mostly, we understand that aerospace is nowhere near as congested as it is here in the States, but they have successfully contributed and executed the UTM protocols, where they either delivered products or carried out crucial either monitoring or whatever it may be. But we got to see that in real time, and that was just mind-blowing. So that is definitely in the pipe works. Look out for that. The only issues that we're having here in the States is obviously there's a lot of bureaucracy involved. And then when you look at the DAC committee, no disrespect, there's very little representation from the individual DSPs, drone service providers. And that's really unfortunate, because what we see on the DAC committee is the huge conglomerates and not really much say-so from the individual or independent businesses. So eventually, when we get on a level playing field with the rest of these companies, we might have a better input for a UTM. And I'd like to invite my colleagues, Jennifer or Jonathan, to elaborate if you can, please.
Personally speaking, I have a background in manned aviation as well, and I think the biggest problem is going to be getting manned aviation on board. There was a stat that came out a few years ago that the average age of an aircraft today is over 40 years old. And what do you have when you're dealing with 40-year-old airplanes is 40-year-old technology. And what the biggest problem that we're going to have is the technology move forward, and drones are very agile, and they're moving forward so quickly, and they're able to move forward so quickly. What you have now is a 40-year-old aircraft that needs to comply with this new technology that's out there. 5G would be awesome to be able to implement, but right now 5G impacts global positioning systems and terrain awareness systems. So you can't implement 5G for drones, because now you've got a problem with manned aircraft. And so we're really gonna have to get and somehow get together. This manned and unmanned can't be a separate thing. We can't have a drone advisory committee over here and a manned aircraft advisory committee over here and never come together. If we don't come together, this is just gonna hold the drone industry back. And it's gonna be manned aviation that's gonna do it, because they're flying people around, and let's just face it, people are more important than beer. In some parts of the world, I guess. I don't know. But it's just an interesting kind of thing when you look at manned aviation and how it's really going to hold back the drone industry. And it's unfortunate that it is that way. So when you get out into remote areas, Norway is a great example. When you get out into the remote areas, yes, you can implement this technology and do package delivery and things like that. But when you get into these congested spaces, it's because the airplanes are flying overhead is our biggest hindrance right now. In my opinion.
Well, and Jennifer, to kind of tag on to that, I mean, and I think you hit it right on when you start talking about aging aircraft. I mean, obviously there's been a huge push, and I think a lot of people are frustrated to some extent with the NPRM for remote ID that came out. And the point that I kept hearing a lot of people make is, well, you still have these non-cooperative manned aircraft. Yeah. And those are the ones that, at least in my experience, impact UAS operations, at least currently. It's not the citations. It's not, the 737s. Those all have ADS-B and they're, generally well out of the airspace. It's the, it's the small guy in a 172 that, and we had an issue with this actually just like 2 weeks ago with the COA that we have up north with our R&D team was flying some test aircraft, and we have a COA and a NOTAM that's in place. And we still had guys coming through. Had a guy in 172 that came in at about 60 feet, 75 feet near a runway that we were operating off of. And I mean, presumably he never checked the NOTAMs, and he wasn't broadcasting ADSB. So we had no idea on our ADSB receive that he was even in the area.
Right.
So it's until you have everybody operating in the same area and the same technology. And I think a lot of people specifically when you start talking about drone service providers get frustrated that more of a burden is being placed on them than on some manned aviators with non-cooperative aircraft and stuff like that. And that just, I think that creates a sense of division amongst aviators, whether you're on the unmanned side or the manned side. And I think that if we're sharing the airspace, there shouldn't be division. You know, we should all consider ourselves aviators. I know some people don't, but I do.
When I do think of UTM, and those are all great points, I think more to, and having some experience with the drone deliveries and where things are headed, is I think of a lot of drones in the air. I think of managing the unmanned aircraft within one another in these areas that are away from airports where there isn't necessarily conflicts with manned aircraft pilots, but all of that traffic and congestion. And maybe I'm not as educated and I need to just look more into this, or that does fall under UTM. But how is it keeping, when you have a drone delivery company here and then right next door is maybe another drone delivery company, and then you have a pilotless air taxi that's going to come in and land, so you have your drone ports that are popping up all over the place. And like, how is all of that connecting together? And I do want to say, with the manned aircraft, we have even older than 40-year-old aircraft flying in the sky. I'm a private pilot. I have some maintenance experience, but we have really strict standards, and there's always going to be that folks that don't follow it in the remote side, in the manned side. But we'll see with drones, the same standards coming down the line.
I think Paul makes a really good point that statistically speaking, we expect the unmanned aircraft to vastly outnumber the manned aircraft. So it's not even just a question of deconfliction with manned aircraft, but also definitely between unmanned aircraft. And it's not just don't run into each other, but it's, you know, if you're on a drone delivery and you set your flight path and then somebody else is delivering an organ, you know, you need to like get out of the way. So.
And to stay a little on topic, for myself, was that we see these things happening so fast. I went to the DAC conference at the end of last year, and remote ID was supposed to be this thing that was maybe 2 or 3 years down the road. And now here, remote ID is Bill commented maybe by the end of the year. So this thing isn't just on our doorstep; it's coming through our door. So in regards to this unmanned air traffic, if we already have the folks at the DAC and we have the airline rep from the Airline Pilots Association on that, so manned aircraft has this great representation. And Adrian said we don't have as much of a representation from the little guy. We have some folks like Michael Leo with the FDNY, and he's that pilot, almost I'd say the smallest guy representation. Not that anything that he's doing is small, but from an actual operator standpoint, it's here, right? It just seems like they talk about it, then it's here.
Sure. I think I'll just summarize this in a way so that everyone, the audience, can understand. So one thing is, again, I'm also a manned aircraft pilot, and that's how I got into the drone side. But the other part I understand is, from both sides, I need to fly myself, the manned aircraft, and I want to fly my drone also. Now comes the big part of, the DAC exists. DAC has got a mix of manned and unmanned, and some folks who have never flown a drone personally, but is part of a committee and all. But the end thing is that UTM as such, when it has to get integrated into a state, first of all, it has to get integrated into a state. That means your state agencies, your public safety agencies, your private industries that are part of that state have to all be communicating just like this chat line. They should be able to communicate with each other. That is the biggest thing that's lacking right now. Is some states are talking to each other, but I know some states are keeping everything more like a proprietary sort of thing. The companies in that state, even the local authorities in that state don't even know what their companies are doing. And when it comes to drone operation, somehow everyone feels like what they're doing is the most important thing out there. But remember one thing, this with the amount of drones that is being utilized, there could be days where you reach a location and there'll be 4 or 5 other people already there with drones. Because the reason is you didn't communicate, you didn't follow NOTAMs, you didn't have those apps. So you have companies that have already put out a version of UTM apps where they ping your location. If, say, for example, a state like North Carolina standardizes and says that all of you all in this, who wants to fly a drone has to use this app. They're not saying that which company. I think they could build their own app, but they say you have to use this app. This app tells all drone operators where they are and where they're positioned. Now, UTM is what that is being created, but the problem is there's so many UTM providers who are saying their solution is best. They're doing it in Europe. Someone comes and says their solution is best because they're doing it in Canada. Our airspace is the busiest in the world, and we have a lot more to look at. And our drone industry, though moving forward, is still disconnected. And the first step to making anything successful, safety, the important thing is safety here. And it is first to have a safety culture within your operation. If you cannot create that safety culture, do not expect that to give you a result. Like, oh, we're going to put UTM. Okay, even if they say the UTM is going to be approved, who's actually going to do it in these states? It's not like a private industry coming and saying that from tomorrow you have to use our software. No. It has to go through a channel. The problem is people are talking at this level, and like my camera say, okay, they're talking at this level. The people at this level are very interested to get these things done, and then this level folks are not even in the communication. Now, by the time it reaches down here, it takes time. I'm part of the DAX, the UTM ConOps team, also of the safety thing, the UST group. And that's what we are seeing is they're still talking about implementation. More than implementation, they're talking about how they can integrate it into their space. But there's no path forward on public acceptance, education. That still is a big debate. So if you're a company owner, if you're a drone pilot, you have to first start getting yourself into that safety culture of being able to report where you are, know where you're flying, knowing the airspace, knowing all the knowing how to use lands. All these things you need to know, because it's coming that point that suddenly you're going to be expected to fit yourself into this confusion. And if you cannot figure it out already, those elements, it become difficult at that point to suddenly accept it. That's why half the companies are going to be like, oh, this is not going to fit our model. That's because it's not specifically for the company's type of model. They're trying to see is you have a national airspace that is manned aircrafts. You have birds that are flying, which don't even have anything. They're just flying. Then you have things that people skydiving and stuff. Again, they don't ping their locations when they're diving and stuff. You have all these things that's there. And then you have drones of different sizes, people following the rules. And then you have folks who are not following the rules. They want to test their drones, the capability, and they're like testing, YouTube video, my drone is flying at 1,000, 2,000 feet. See, wow. I don't recommend anyone doing this, but this is here, me doing it at 2,000 feet. That gives a wrong message to the manned industry that you're posting all these things for what? You're making it even difficult for your own community to go further. So I think first we have to change our safety culture. Organizations have to integrate safety training, everything from day one. They cannot expect FA to come and say, we're going to say, FA license is going to come with a training element part of it. No, states have to take that decision. Agencies have to take that decision.
All right. I don't think we had another directed topic. I think that was our last. Is that correct, Miriam? Okay.
We're done.
All right.
So I think I want to push it to Bill, an interesting topic which we had last time about DJI and the hotel lawsuit and stuff. So I have Bradley here, Brian Bradley, who is a lawyer from Michael Best, who's written an article. I'll be sharing it with everyone here. But Brian, you want to take a few minutes and just introduce yourself and what this is about?
Yep, that should address Bud Willis's.
Hey, Brian, you're on mute.
So, yeah.
Brian, you're still in mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
We can hear you.
Great. Awesome. Hey, everyone. My name is Brian. Like Darshan said, I'm a patent attorney, and I'm not from North Carolina. I'm not from Texas. I'm from Wisconsin. So I am especially happy to be with you guys today. And I have been following the dispute between DJI and Autel. And recently there has been some movement at the in the dispute. So currently, the International Trade Commission, which is the U.S. body that's in charge of tracking what comes in and out of the country, customs is under their authority, is deciding to review whether or not the DJI drones, and there's a list of affected models in the article, are infringing a patent owned by Autel. And what that essentially means is that they're under threat to be removed from the U.S. marketplace. So the International Trade Commission has the authority to limit their ability to import the DJI drones into the United States. But then they also have this authority to do a cease and desist, which would prevent them from even selling the remaining inventory that's already here in the United States. So there's some potential big stakes for DJI here. But what makes this particularly complex or confusing or unique is that the patent that's being asserted, Autel's patent that they're using to enforce against DJI, has actually been found by the United States Patent Office as being invalid. It's gone through what's called a validity review after it's been granted. It's been challenged. And the U.S. Patent Office said, oh, you know what, like, nope, that this patent is not valid and it should not have been granted originally. So what that means is that it sets up this very weird, not weird, but it sets up this intergovernment discrepancy between one government agency saying, yeah, you know, this patent is valid and we don't think you should be able to bring in the DJI drones anymore into the United States. And another patent or another government agency saying, you know, well, that patent's not even valid to begin with. So what this all means is that, you know, the future of the availability of these DJI drones is still uncertain. And so the full International Trade Commission is reviewing it now, and they'll make a decision by August 2020. And if they come down, what I suspect if they come down and say, you know, if they continue to be opposed to the position that the patent office is taking, then it'll likely get appealed again to the higher court that's above them both. So there's a federal court of appeals that's above both the International Trade Commission and the United States Patent Office. So they would be the ones that would settle the conflict, the interagency conflict. So that's kind of just the gist of the article is that, if you were on the fence of getting one of these affected DJI models, no time like the present. If you if you need any excuse to go out and buy one, I'm giving you it right now because it might, become more difficult in the future.
Thanks, Brian. And also share the link. Anyone has any questions specific to Brian? And again, it's just, to keep you all informed. I myself have DJI drones. We all use DJI's products. So it's nothing, it's nothing against a specific company. And we're just trying to make sure everyone's aware about it and what's going on. A lot of wrong information is being put out. So we want to clear all that up. And if you have heard about something different or something new, we would like to know about it because many of the programs have what I would say like 50 to 100 drones, and most of them are all DJI products. So they shouldn't be afraid that, we can't go and buy anymore or something like that. So I think.
So would Darshan, would he be able, someone that has spare parts, Brian, would you happen to know just off the top of your head, spare parts, propellers or?
Probably would be depending on if the item was patent oriented or whether it was something outside the patent. So, my opinion.
Yeah, exactly. I think the patent that's under dispute in this particular conflict is related to the collapsible arms. So if it was a different type of spare part that was not even covered or not contemplated by the patent that's being disputed here, then there would be no issue with continued access to it.
True. And I've shared the link, so feel free to look at it. We'll also be, later on, we'll be sharing a newsletter and that you will be able to get the link also. But if you have any questions, the information is there. You can reach out to Brian or any other lawyers from Michael Best and have a discussion on this. We can now move on to, do we want to, Bill, is there a bunch of questions that we need to answer before we move on to something else?
Well, we've got some general questions. Tanae asked earlier about different types of drone configurations that could be more proven, more efficient in the future because the quadcopter, this kind of goes into delivery, I think, with VTOL, I'll just start out with a few comments here. I think that what we see in a drone today is not necessarily going to be the drone we see 5 years from now. So I think it all depends on use cases and vendors, manufacturers finding a niche that, is money making that will develop that type of technology for the use case. So, we already have, fixed wing, we have some VTOL already out there, but what's their use case and what's the benefit right now? It's up to be seen. Agriculture, I think the quadcopter, and even if we're doing mapping, the fixed wing is a use case. So it's
I think Bill,
what else out there.
I think Bill, I think I would like to direct that question to Jonathan. Jonathan, you're from Martin UAV, right? You guys do work with military, public safety, and even commercial, and you guys got some unique aircrafts. So
yeah.
So the VTOL also you all have. So what is the industry like with these three different sections that you are you all cater to those folks? What is the industry like in there?
Yeah. So I mean. Obviously, VTOL seems like the way to go moving forward. It seems like more and more organizations, militaries, they love the benefit of the endurance that you get from a fixed wing aircraft, but obviously the portability and rapid deployment that you see with a vertical takeoff situation. We see, looking at the different industries, the one thing that everybody comes to is like, well, we need range and endurance, and whether you're looking at battery powered or gas powered or a hybrid or whatever you're looking at, endurance is like the name of the game for a lot of organizations right now. So that takes in a lot of ways the straight quadcopter kind of out of the equation, just because for the most part, even the largest batteries and even ones with hybrid or hydrogen fuel cell systems, they're just not mature enough. So if you want long endurance, you're looking at fixed wing. I mean, pretty much without exception. But most people don't. They're intimidated. I think, especially when they're just getting into the industries, people are intimidated by the concept of fixed wings, just because they generally require like more ground equipment, and people don't really like that. So we've seen a lot of people leaning towards us across multiple industries because they don't want the ground support equipment. They don't want launchers. They don't want nets. They don't want anything else. They just want to be able to go fly. And I think part of that is driven by the commercialization that we've seen of drones like DJI and Autel and Unique and all of these consumer and light industrial grade drones that have gotten people a little bit spoiled. Every industry that we talk to, they're like, well, can I run it from my iPad? Like, that's the question now. And so we're finding ourselves like even though we're kind of a defense organization at our core, we're recognizing like, okay, well, people want to fly this thing from a tablet. So we've got to figure that out. And so, recognizing that and trying to make sure that it's kind of funny that you think of like a defense company being driven by consumer product, but in the drone space, we very much are. Across just about every customer we have, whether even the military, who's traditionally more, they have a higher tolerance for non-user friendly equipment, I guess is the easiest way to say it. I don't know if we have any vets here, but if you're from the military, military aviation, military ground side, you don't always have the shiny new stuff. And so, but even now that they're kind of pushing us towards a little bit more, more intuitive user interfaces and stuff like that. But yeah,
Jonathan, I really have one question which came up in my mind, and I think I know that the military is also interested in commercially off-the-shelf drones, and also the ones that are specially built and everything. When they are so when you are testing or doing operations. So when you do you all do beyond visual line of sight operations, testing and stuff, or demonstrations, or is that I'm sure they don't have to go through FAA because it's their airspace and stuff. So this may be a question like a lot of people I have seen having this about when military is using the similar type of drones, how do they do these operations compared to commercial and public safety?
No, that's a good question. And it depends a lot on where we're operating. So like our R&D team and some of our training, we operate in an FAA granted COA that's on the border between Texas and Oklahoma up near Lake Texoma. And I mean, and we're in normal FAA airspace. So it's class G, but we're restricted in altitude and range based on the COA that was approved. So, in that sense, we are, like traditional aircraft. When we are working with the military, specifically, like I just recently came back from Fort Campbell, we were training a group of soldiers out there. And if you're on a restricted area, a restricted airspace for the military installation there, that airspace is not governed by a tower in the traditional sense. It's governed by range control. And so you treat range control the same way you would treat, ATC in the national airspace, and they control your airspace, your altitude blocks. So it's very similar to operating in the States in national airspace. And I mean, and in the truest sense, it is national airspace. It's just restricted and granted authority to range control to monitor. But when we do work like international waters and stuff like that, again, it's all based on the air boss. And so we fall under kind of a military airspace control for those types of things for most of our missions. So, but yeah, it's when you're in the national airspace and specifically in a restricted area, you fall under range control, and they pretty much tell you what to do the same way ATC would tell you in controlled airspace anywhere else.
Also, if I can piggyback off of Jonathan, we're having a public webinar this Monday that deals specifically with those issues. We have Lone Star UAS test facility where they test a lot of these technologies. And then we also are joined by the Choctaw Nation, which is a special group because their airspace is different than the FAA controlled airspace. So if you guys want to tune in this Monday at 3 p.m. Central, we'll share the link and we'll discuss those issues. Thank you.
And that's good information, Adrian, which it's a whole different ball game. You have tribal government also having their own, they regulate it in a different way and everything. So you have, when I mentioned earlier about IPP, the focus is that state, local, and tribal government help the FAA regulate the airspace. So that'd be a good, interesting discussion. Adrian, when you get a chance to share that information on the chat so people can register for it. I think a lot of questions came upon, and Bill also messaged me that it's about SOPs and basically SMS systems and stuff like that. I think Jennifer is already answering a lot of those things. But I think, we have Riley also here, who's been, a person in North Carolina driving education in public safety side and everything. So between Jennifer and Riley, the discussion is, and Bill, correct me if there's anything else missing, but agencies, organizations, all are using different SOPs. There is standards like, TOPS and other, you have other private entities that have created standards and everything. How do we go about standardizing? First of all, what's the importance of standardizing? Because this word standardizing, we have heard it, a lot of us discuss about it, but what's your take on actually this word standardizing, and how is it going to, or what is the step for agencies and organizations to move towards it? Whoever's Jennifer or Riley, who would start it out the discussion. Riley?
Jennifer, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, you don't have to mute and ask her to go first. You could have left yourself mute. She would have spoken herself.
No, man, I'm just saying ladies first.
Standardizing is a scary word. Standardizing, if you think about what the safety management system program looks like at a large corporation versus a company that maybe has one or two people on board, I think you want to be careful with the word standardization. I think that you can put out templates so that somebody that comes into this industry not knowing what a good SOP looks like or what a good SMS program looks like gets a feel for it, but they're going to have to be able to scale it to their operation. Otherwise, you're going to drive them crazy. You're going to kind of run them out of business. And the worst of it is they're just not going to implement it. So I really like the idea of templates because I feel like you're handing them the keys to the kingdom, and then you're allowing that organization to implement it appropriately, as appropriate. And I just want to add, if you're not keeping up with the chat, the FAA is hook, line, and sinker bought into SMS programs, and they have so much training material and so many templates and so much information available. I would highly recommend go to the FAA website and look up safety management systems. I think they do a really good job. They provide you training materials for your team and just a really good way to set up a really good, robust SMS program. Riley, over to you.
Riley, what's your take on the public safety side? I think public safety side, standardizing is something that's part and parcel of their life, right?
Yes, sir. And like Jennifer said, I mean, the word is scary, and a lot of people frown upon it when you say it. But with public safety, what we see is we're just trying to train all the pilots to a set standard, just like they're training with other organizations and divisions for public safety. So if you've got firemen that are all from different units and they're responding to the same fire call, they've predominantly been in the same skill set and they know exactly what's going on. Same way with a lot of your manned pilots. If they're flying for highway patrol or they're flying for medevac, then a lot of them have had the same training and standards. So what we're trying to do is to work with the state and push that so that our public safety gets that same training across the board. Because what we're having right now is if we have 3 UAS units show up to fly a search and rescue, we have nothing that has vetted these 3 units. We may have one who takes, he flies part-time for a unit, but he takes pictures and does, freelance photography work with a drone, but he's never flown really a search and rescue mission or worked with public safety, and may not even know how to read the software or maps or anything. So we're just trying to standardize that, or not necessarily we're trying to do it, but we're trying to train our state public safety officials here in North Carolina and our guys in the field, kind of a standardized training. So everybody's just the same across the board. And trust me, we are always open for input, suggestions of how we can change things or do things different. And we're always looking at other people's playbooks and seeing kind of how they're doing and taking notes. So that's kind of what we're doing right now, but I think it's something that will be coming soon.
And really something what Jonathan had mentioned sometime back that I remembered when folks ask, is this compatible with an iPad and stuff? And half the time, the agents, the pilots in the agency don't even know that the iPad is not even approved within the organization. And they can't even, to acquire an iPad, they have to go through the whole process and everything. And here they're investing in drones or using drones, or basically they have no guidance on actually how to operate. You have SOPs and you will have a data management plan and everything, but if you don't educate that to the at the point wherein your folks can actually use it, it doesn't make any sense. I know folks who have asked, have you all read through your SOP? They didn't even know that the agency organization had an SOP, because it's somehow it's like a I would use it like more like a cool culture that we have a drone program and we have SOPs. Okay, great. Is your pilots following the SOPs? No. Is the pilot even has the pilot even read through the whole SOPs? And I would say 75% of them no. You will see them if they say not to use your personal personal mobile or personal iPad for operation, they will still use it because they're like, oh, we forgot to bring the company one or the charged or whatever it is. So when you can't follow the SOP at a organization or agency level, even if you standardize it at a national level or state level, the education plays a big role. So this is where I insist again, the safety culture has to change. You have to make sure that just like they take their part 107 examination, there is a whole thing on understanding SOP. There has to be a test for that. As man pilots, you have to go through those yearly testing. Even if you don't do an emergency procedure, you still have to do an emergency procedure in a simulator. You still have to write a test in which you have to explain how you're going to do an emergency procedure. But in the drone world, it's very different. Every 2 years, half the folks who go to renew their license starts panicking because they're like, I have a company and I have to renew my license. Why the hell doesn't FAA just let me fly? Why is this 2-year requirement there? At least there's that 2-year requirement, I'm saying. Forget if people had the chance, they would just not renew their license and use it. And I know folks who haven't gone and renewed their license because they said it's COVID-19, so let's just relax. But even after the COVID-19, they are not going to renew it till someone pulls them out and says that your license is expired. There is that, as a student, how many of us have not renewed our license and fixed our broken light till cops pull them and you say, oh my God, I didn't know. Yeah, it's last 1 year is broken, but I found out only today. Similarly, your license, you're not going to renew it because you feel like I'm good pilot, I'm safe pilot, I have this company, I have everything, I'm working for this thing. Who's bothered? This is where that thing has to change. So if we want to standardize something, it has to start at a bottom level where we change our way of seeing this industry. Why the manned aircraft folks don't see this the way we see it is because we are putting that image in front of them that, okay, flying a drone is all about on your iPad, pushing some buttons, using game controllers, and anyone can fly. So they made drone flying so easy that people have taken for granted. I remember when I used to go 1-2 weeks training to fly the fixed wing, and worried that the instructor will fail me because my landing is not going to be good enough. So that type of fear no longer exists with anyone. So these are things which I feel has to change. Anyone else has anything to add to that? Are we any other Bill? Anything else came up on that topic?
No, I just want to make a comment. I know that in situations where I've been called out to work with sheriff's departments for search and rescue, and civilians have gone out there to try to fly their drone in the area, and that's part of the other issue is that you've got this airspace out there that everybody wants to help, which is a great thing, but the coordination is not there. And that's why that SOP is very important when you're working with those type of events. We're coming up in hurricane season, both for Texas and North Carolina. You know, there's use cases for drones there that before and after the storm, you know, and that's, you know, that's going to be the challenge moving forward, is making certain that we're being successful in showing the implementation for that. So there was a question, I think it got answered in chat about I just saw that pop up about taking the recurrency test. Yeah, that is something you have to take in person every 24 months. And I think the letters is UGR for the test, I believe. I remember I just took mine back last year. Anybody want to make any comments on that other than right now with COVID? I know there's a little bit.
I think what we can do is open up the mic to some folks who want to talk.
Sure.
Before we get into the segment on the last panel, the last session we did, that is preparing the future workforce for the unmanned industry. We had some questions that are unanswered. We're going to answer those questions. But does someone want to speak? Take a minute to talk about something that you found interesting, something you want to share. It's open. It's open mic cover for the next 5 minutes. Let's see. Anyone? I can start pulling out people's names out randomly and telling you to speak something, unless you're.
Flight Mike. Mike, are you there? Mike asked about a guy in Louisiana. I'm not familiar with what happened to a guy in Louisiana. Was he flying it?
The one that got
I'm here. I've been trying here.
So what's the question, Mike?
5 minutes.
So me and Mark are here on the webinar together. We're still out in the field from the fly-in. So my question was just what happened with that guy, and what happened is, I don't know.
I do. I know what happened.
So what are you talking about here? There's some sort of hidden agenda going on.
I don't put the videos on, Marty, but I think there was a guy in Louisiana who was flying his drone in 2018.
Yeah.
He was just doing like liftoffs. He had like a couple acreage on a property he just bought, and I guess his neighbor was a sheriff's deputy, and somehow got him arrested, and he's going to do 90 days in jail for this. He's not allowed to own a drone for the rest of his life. There was like a GoFundMe account for him. Yeah, there was like fees and everything.
Raising money for the appeal.
He was found guilty of 3 counts of criminal trespassing, 30 days in jail per count, $300 fine per count, 2 years probation, not allowed to own a drone again. So
yeah,
so this affects all of us.
I just put the GoFundMe link in the chat if anybody's interested. There's a little bit of additional details in there. I don't personally know James, but I've been following the story pretty closely over the past couple weeks, and
he has posted that he's found an attorney, so that's good. He got some representation.
Yeah.
Was it Ashley Felton?
Well, that's what he says. As of today, he found an attorney, and that's been retained. So
was it Ashley?
Because Ashley won a case here in North Carolina for a drone operator.
Yeah.
So she would be my.
I find it funny that in some of these drone groups, they are adamant about not following the rules, but when they get caught, they're using the laws to help protect themselves. So they'll post that they flew up 2,000 feet, but at the same time, I don't care what the FAA says. But then when they get busted by something, they're looking for help. So it's kind of hypocritical type standpoint for some people.
Yeah. Well, the judge wouldn't allow him to put his flight profiles admissible in the evidence.
Yeah.
So he couldn't see that his flight route, and he had an expert that was going to Skype into the court, and the judge wouldn't allow his expert.
Yeah.
Federal laws.
It's definitely, and that's one of the things. I think there's still the privacy question. I think there's still kind of blanketly, the FAA says we own everything in navigable airspace.
Yeah.
But there's still some states that have privacy laws, that there have air ownership laws that you could build up as high as you have and have an expectation of privacy to a level. I think that's still, the courts are going to have to be, defining some of this stuff out. And it doesn't help that, when someone shoots a drone out of the sky, that the courts aren't willing to prosecute in that area. It seems like there's been multiple circumstances of that there's not support.
And with that,
there was a case that went to court for the guy that got his Inspire shot out of the sky by a guy, a neighbor, and it went all the way to court, and the guy was charged for it, but he never paid the owner back. So he's just on his record that, he was charged and convicted for doing it, but he never paid the guy back, for his aircraft.
And federal prosecution didn't take effect.
The guy who shot it down actually found out how much the drone cost in court. He was like, "Man, I didn't know those things cost that much money." So.
And the reports, the not over my backyard, right? The NOMBs, not over my backyard. More of those folks, I think, came out with coronavirus, with the COVID-19. And as we saw more of these reports that DJI drones, Chinese drones, more folks were coming out and saying, hey, we see this activity. It needs to be stopped. Just stop it. So once we see drone deliveries and you have that constant highway going over folks' backyards, I just think the reports are going to start going through the roof in regards to like, hey, this is my airspace. I own this. I don't want to hear it, see it. And they don't know there's not even a camera on it. This delivery drone doesn't even carry a payload, so it can't even see you, physically cannot see your house.
And I think a lot of that, and I always encourage people, if you are in this industry, especially now, even though it's, a lot of us have been in it for a while, it's still a very young industry. And so there's still a lot of misconceptions about what it can and can't do. I've been in unmanned systems since 2008. And even then, people thought like, oh, you've got a thermal camera on midwave infrared, so you can like see through people's walls, and you can, and trying to, dispel some of those misconceptions about the capabilities. And once people realize that a majority of the drones that are out there can't see through your windows, they can't see in your house, they probably don't even have a zoom lens. Like once they realize all the things that they can't do, they're much less concerned.
Exactly.
Jonathan.
I'm sorry. Can I just add on that real briefly? At the end of the day, we're all ambassadors for this industry, and your attitude is going to determine your altitude. So if you get approached by someone, you might be better off taking the high road and explaining to them what you're doing and being kind, versus probably what the gentleman in Louisiana did was probably upset the guy, and he didn't realize that he was a police officer, and obviously the judge is going to take the police officer's side versus this gentleman. So at the end of the day, you have to be an ambassador for the industry, be kind to people, have empathy. They don't understand these technologies, and you'd get, a lot better return on investment for this industry.
And that, I would say, to go off your point, Adrian, we talked in the beginning about these recreational fly-ins, because in my community here where I operate, the last thing we need is that bad representation. So being able to bring folks out, whether they're recreational pilots or not, even if they're not pilots, to help educate and get these folks to understand what drones can and can't do and why they're doing these things.
So let me point out something. This is when we mentioned about the community and the attitude that we have to keep. So I'll tell you about a personal experience that we had gone through when this was me when I was part of NCDOT, and I had taken my flight team out to Lake Wheeler, and I don't know if the gentleman is on the call. It's nothing bad. It's a good story, but end of the day, this is what I want to try and say is I had taken two of the interns to get them their flight assessment done. So we went to the Dorothy Dix location. It's a public park and stuff. So we were on one corner doing our flight. Suddenly I see this vehicle coming out, and this a recreational pilot, he has built his own drone and everything. And I told my guys, just make sure that we are safe and everything. And when we generally do our operations, we call out loud, like taking off, landing, any of those things we will be shouting out. So we were not still flying. We were just getting everything settled in. Suddenly that person's aircraft just passes by us, just like close to us. And I didn't, I just said, okay, that's fine. We are not flying yet. We took off. Then he was flying in that corner. We were flying here, and his was a fixed wing, ours was a rotor wing, and we're taking interns who are nervous, and they were flying, and we were right. They were just going up and down, left and right, just basic stuff. Suddenly, that aircraft just passes by us again. Now I was upset because we are just practicing and teaching someone. You have a lot of area to cover, I understand, but there has to be some sort of etiquettes, some sort of this thing. So I have my mistakes also. I went to him and I said, excuse me, I just wanted to talk to you. So he got pissed off. He was abusive. He was like, get out of my space right now. And I understood that's my mistake. I shouldn't have walked into when he was flying his aircraft. So I walked back. I kept quiet. I waited, suspended my operations, came down. I told him, there's a lot of space. If you needed everything, you could just told me that, we'll be flying this area. Just a friendly this thing, so we would maintain a corner or we would stop operation. It is just practice going on. He said, I don't have to tell you anything. This is a public park. And I'm like, you don't have to tell me anything. Just that, I explained to him, these are fresh pilots. They're learning something. The guy, he just left the drone, the controller on my hand as this aircraft passed. And I was like, I just wanted to tell you that it's a safety culture. So he's like, I know all these drones. It's DJI. I don't care about these things. I got a lot of these drones. I said, we're not having a competition. Who's bigger? Who's this thing or anything? None of those competition right now. I said, let me explain to you in simple. My drone is insured by my agency. I lose it. I don't care. Nothing goes from my pocket. I don't lose a sleep. You build this drone. I know you spent thousands of dollars on it. If it goes off, you pay for it from your pocket. I don't know if you have insurance, that's your problem. But all I'm trying to say is that there has to be some sort of understanding. It's an open park, anyone's friendly. Then his point was like, no one else, when I come to fly and no one else comes and talks to me. I'm like, you could be the first one to go and tell people that I'm flying here, this is what I'm doing, and have a mutual understanding. He's like, yeah, you're right. And we sat and discussed for a few minutes and it all ended up with a smooth discussion. And then he's like, oh yeah, I totally understand, it's my bad. I said, it's my bad, I entered your airspace. But that's the thing, we have to be polite. We have to understand that recreational pilots may not like commercial operations. Commercial pilots don't like recreational, just like manned and unmanned. There's the battle each of us have to face. So we have to understand that we have to be polite to the folks. We have to make sure that we are doing everything right on our side. Because tomorrow, if something happens, it's going to be did we follow our rules? Forget the other person, but we followed the rules. We were polite enough. So, I just wanted to bring that out because I'm sure many of you all are recreational pilots, many are commercial, but there should be some sort of, I think, etiquettes when it comes to flying, like at least to the point that someone needs to know where you are, what your intentions are. Otherwise, crashes is going to be very common, especially in a park where 10 people are flying an aircraft. They are just like, instead of flying safely, we're just looking who else is going to come close to our drones and stuff like that. Just wanted to put that out. But I think we'll move towards the questions now that was put out. And again, anyone has anything to point out, feel free, let us know. So there was a bunch of questions that came out. And I'm telling you, a bunch means we had crossed 200 questions, out of which I had to bring it down. So one of the questions, we won't be able to cover everything, but we'll take what are the job opportunities available for those trained in unmanned aviation, aside from add-on skills for law enforcement, military, etc.? What organizations will be hiring? Anyone want to take that question?
I'll chime in a little bit.
Go ahead.
So I'm a utility pilot. I just do inspections for the utility companies. I was in California for PG&E, SoCal Con Edison, and SDGE. And I mean, one of the nice things about that is it's a traveling job. And I mean, you just got to kind of stay on the threads about when these companies are posting these jobs. I mean, last year I live in North Carolina, but last year I think I only did a month here because I was on the road full time just doing contracts. The last contract I was on was Florida Power and Light, doing LiDAR inspections for their hardening project. So I like doing utility inspections. That's a nice little route to go.
Nice.
Now,
And
Mike,
are there a lot of jobs in
your
that? Sorry, who's that?
Well, I was going to ask Mike, is your background in utility inspection? I mean, is that what you're trained to do? Or are you just a generic pilot who flies and gives the raw footage?
So my background started in the drone industry, just RC. I had an RC background, so I've been flying, visual line of sight since I was a kid, basically. And here in Raleigh, about 10 years ago, we were the ones who were establishing that 5/8 downlink. So when the FPV market started, we were building 5/8 antennas. And initially, I was just traveling around to the FPV market selling antennas. And so that was how I initially started. And then I started taking agricultural shots for some of the farms out here. And from there on, it just blossomed.
So you don't have an engineering background?
No.
I think that's one of the concerns I've always had, is that people are asking, I can't do a bridge inspection because I'm not a civil engineer background. I mean, I could take pictures, but someone's got to interpret that data properly. So that's why I was just trying to understand if you were actually doing the inspection or just creating the video and the imagery for someone else to inspect.
Right. No, I understand exactly. So what I do is I just collect the data. Somebody else inspects the data I collect. It's basically a system. So as a drone pilot, I just collect the data. At some projects, they'll have us format it. Like if we're doing transmission lines, 500 kV poles, which is what started that Paradise Fire in California. If we're doing stuff like that, some companies will have us sort our data, but that's the most of what it is. Most of the companies have somebody who renders the data, as well as like licensed, transmission and distribution inspectors or installers or engineers who inspect that data to render it. So I just collect the data and that's it. But a lot of these jobs are also paid by production. So you don't get paid until they actually render your data and approve it.
And I would say that's similar to kind of what 910 Drones is doing locally, is being able to fly lines, provide images. And this is where we're seeing software play a really big role, is being able to have that handoff of data from the provider to the user.
So I have a question from to the Texas folks. What organizations are hiring? According to y'all?
We have a huge oil and gas conglomerate in South Texas. There's a lot of inspections. I deal a lot in the thermal industry, so I do a lot of data acquisition thermally as well as analysis. But we're very fortunate here in the state of Texas. We do have a lot of industry, so the possibilities are limitless.
And if I can add on to that, I have a pretty non-traditional career in aviation. I design training curriculum. I write documents. I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to that. So we have an OEM here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area as well that's doing quite a bit with unmanned. It's Bell Helicopter Technology, and there are several OEMs out there that are looking for folks with experience with displays, experience in the field, experience with law enforcement and inspection work and things like that, because they want to use that experience to innovate. And so Bell Helicopter had a number of innovation jobs. It's like innovation was in the title. So whether or not you have that engineering background or not, the experience that you can bring forward as a subject matter expert is really what those OEMs are looking for. There's another OEM in the Phoenix area, and I'm kind of hesitant to name names if I don't necessarily know somebody that's there, but in the Phoenix area that's also hiring quite a bit. They're looking for salespeople and demo people, but behind the scenes, they're looking for people to contribute to the innovation and the software and making their product better. So if you want to fly, that's great, but I would encourage you to diversify. We're in a weird time right now where the piloting jobs aren't available, but training might be the thing that you can contribute. You can train the next generation. You can design training curriculum, and we're talking now about writing SMS manuals and standard operating procedures. If you are versed in all of that, you will never find yourself without something to do and something to contribute to this industry. So I would just encourage just the consideration for the non-standard career. And I know that there's a number of questions about maintenance, which is a whole topic that we can get into when we're ready, but maintenance would be another area that if you're really looking to dive into this industry, get multiple experience across all of those areas, and you'll never find yourself without something to do.
And I agree with that. as I have been working with a lot of universities and talking to folks and all, I've realized one thing: there's a lack of good instructors, good education. So that's one of the biggest thing in this industry is we don't have good faculty that is got hands-on experience with these type of technologies. You
Right.
have faculties who have theory knowledge and come from robotics backgrounds and stuff to teach. You have community colleges that have certification programs which needs instructors, pilots to train. So there's a whole market for training and education, which a lot of people don't like to get into because they feel that they are not a good instructor or they cannot teach. But you don't realize one thing is it is not something you realize. You can just find out that you're you're going to be a good teacher or instructor. It comes over time of mastering your craft. If you're good at what you do, you know what the information is out there. You can teach people, and there's a lot of folks who are ready to pay for that education. And a lot of good direction, like those who are interested to know about jobs. UPS I know is and I've been having constant discussion with UPS. They have so many projects coming up, but they don't have the staff to fill it. They need pilots, they need operations managers, they need technicians, they need all these things, but they're not just going to hire someone with just a little bit experience. Just because I have a Part 107, they're going to hire. No, they're asking you to have background in commercial, be commercial pilots, be aircraft technicians. So you have to have additional skills. You cannot, a Part 107 may not get you a job in these type of environment, but this type of environment pays way a lot than some of the other industries that is there. So opportunities are there. Just that not everyone is utilizing these opportunities. And when I hear people saying that the jobs are less, I'm like, there are a lot of jobs, but you're just not trying to take it one step forward and continue learning. Part 107 is, and Riley and me, wherever we go, we talk about, Riley, what do you say Part 107 is? What is that sentence you use?
It's just your license to learn.
Yeah.
License to learn. Yeah, that's it. It's not license. It's just simple thing, a license to learn. So if you stop at that, that means you're not really serious to get into this industry. And the industry is big. The $1 billion industry, which we talk about, does exist, but it's not in just flying a drone. There's a lot beyond that.
We also have another saying here in Raleigh: if you're not crashing, you're not flying.
That should be a tagline.
Well,
you should have put it out
not
today.
flying
Like,
well.
That's easy to say when you're flying
Adrian's
$1,000
quote needs to be on a T-shirt.
No.
Attitude and altitude. I like that one.
Hey, if you guys want, you guys should come out and see the stuff we play with and fly. Yeah, for civilians, we get toys.
Yeah, we're old school too.
Nice. I think I'll move to the next question. There were some questions on folks with military backgrounds. It answers a lot towards this. Like, so I won't go into the question again, but basically, folks with military background, what jobs opportunities are there for them? Similarly, same opportunities. Really, you come with different experience, you stand a better chance.
Can I say, Darshan, having come out of the military, if you did maintenance in the military, if you've piloted, on your transition, you need to take some of them, not everyone's being told this because there's lots of people transitioning out. But if you did maintenance, you need to step out of the military and you need to go to your local FSDO. I believe it's Flight Services District Office. You take your DD-214 there and you can meet with an inspector who will give you a sign off to test for your AMP certification, or maybe it's just your airframe or your airframe and power plant. But Jennifer mentioned these maintenance jobs, drones are going to become type certified. You're going to have that AMP. Zipline's looking to hire maintenance technicians. So if you have that experience in the military, you really need to do that search and find how you can transition that into civilian certifications going forward.
And if I can add to that, avionics technicians would also be in high demand. So A&P is going to fix the outside, airframe and power plant. That's what A&P is. But A&P mechanics never touch anything with wires, and it's kind of funny how they talk about that.
So Jennifer, I would say I'm an aircraft electrician. I was a 15 Fox in the Army, so avionics technician. The same experience that an avionics technician is getting is what they consider airframe. So airframe certification will cover that wiring, that harness, that avionics type experience.
And if I can take that even one step further, and our aircraft is this way certainly, and I know a few other of the Group 3 OEMs are in a similar space. But aircraft are moving, specifically when you look at like communications protocols, they're moving to IP based. Like a lot of aircraft now in the UAS, in the Group 2, Group 3 space are IP based. So for us, we have people who have A&P backgrounds who try to do maintenance on our aircraft or troubleshooting on our aircraft, and they're completely lost because it is 80% networking, the ability to understand a subnet and make sure your IPs match up. It's more so that than it is turning a wrench. So if you're not yet, like a basic, not you have to get like a CCNA, but basic level networking and computer-based troubleshooting is going to go a long way as aircraft continue to get smarter and move towards certain network protocols that are going to require that skill set. Beyond just being able to change spark plugs.
So Brandon posted, but the A&P is greatly directed at manned aircraft and won't cover a lot of what is needed for US. I just missed that question. So basically, so I think what he means is, my experience, I have no experience with the A&P side of it. So I would leave someone to talk about how the manned side training is going to help in the unmanned side. Anyone wants to mention about A&P certification and how they can get it and how long does it take?
In regards to maintenance, I don't think there's going to be that big of a difference. And we see the military is already flying fixed wing drones, whether they're electric or gas powered. If it's electric powered, you're just removing the power plant side of it. So it's more just airframe in general. We don't have type, in commercial use, we don't have we don't have type certified drones. So there really isn't any kind of maintenance programs that exist. But the way that these aircraft are going to be built is the same way that a manned aircraft is designed, whether you're using carbon fiber or metal and you're riveting, or you're connecting wire harnesses, if you're soldering a unit, these are the same skills, techniques that'll be utilized from the information and experience that I have. I think when it comes to software, though, we're going to see this difference from an engineering standpoint. When there is an issue, troubleshooting it, diagnosing it, figuring out. But again, if we're swapping out boxes from an avionics standpoint, this isn't performing properly. You're pulling a box and you're putting something new in, and then you're going to put it through a test. And I apologize. I really wanted to hear. I had just lost power when Jonathan came in, so I'll have to reconnect with you, Jonathan, or watch the recording.
Yeah, and Paul, just to add, are you a hunter guy, a shadow guy? What's your background?
The 60 and the 47. So Chinooks and Blackhawk.
Okay, so you can't do those. Well, you said Army maintenance. I thought you might have been like with one of the UAS programs.
No, I got into UAS from a commercial standpoint after that, and I did some no experience working maintenance in the military on any UAS, but did work both military aircraft that were fixed wing and helicopter.
Okay.
So I have a question in this part. According to you folks, is that an industry that people should start looking into? Is there a scope in that industry? And to get an AMP certification, how long does it take? And something that folks can know that this is an industry they can get into. So
it'd be similar to like an electrician or any other type of trade, you're going to have to get hired on, and you're going to have to work under, whether it's for a Part 145 repair station or a mom and pop repair shop, you're going to have to work under an A&P and an AI. So you're doing a 100-hour inspection, and that's where we're going to see the drone programs get built out. These aircraft from the 1940s that still fly, they're inspected every 100 hours. Mm-hmm. They're inspected every year, and they go through a set, and then there's time and life limited items. So whether it's a 5-year item or a 400-hour item, all these inspections are built in. When that 172 rolls in, these mechanics have a playbook that they roll through. And then these inspections are also somewhat standardized. So you'll work underneath someone at a company, and you will get the experience that is required. So then you can go to the inspector and show him, this is my resume, this is the experience I got. Or like anything else, you can, not like anything else, but you could go to Embry-Riddle. I'm a graduate of Embry-Riddle, that's why it rolls off the tongue. You can go to any of these colleges or universities, and we're seeing community colleges build out programs for aviation maintenance. And you can go through that program and get your degree that route.
That's interesting. Let's move to the next question. There were some questions on, it's related to the same thing, like with the autonomous systems and, things going autonomous, basically, is there a market or future for pilots?
I think there will always be, but I do think it's going to get less. And we're seeing that on our end, even on the military side, even since probably 2010, we've been doing military testing with swarm technology, even Group 2, Group 3 aircraft. As aircraft and autonomy becomes more prominent and accepted, I think that you may have, a pilot monitoring multiple aircraft systems or multiple aircraft, but I do think the demand will back off. I do. That's not a popular opinion in the industry, but it's mine.
It's interesting to go. You mentioned the more than one at a time. So if we look at drone delivery companies, the way it's feasible is you have one pilot operating more than one drone, but these jobs don't even exist now. So will there be less jobs? I don't know. Will some of the jobs that exist now go away? Yes, but there's going to be more new jobs. It's that kind of.
The role is going to evolve, and it's keeping up with that evolution, and it is what it is. Maybe we need more, maybe we need less, but we're going to need different. We need different skill sets.
I agree with Jennifer there. Actually, that's exactly what we see is this idea of one pilot for one aircraft is definitely going to change, but that's actually what makes drone technology more cost effective for a lot of applications. So then you start getting a lot more applications that don't exist now. So I think that the jobs are going to evolve. And they'll change from one pilot and one aircraft, but they're not going to go away. I believe there's going to be a constant expansion.
So let me put this question out to everyone out there. It's not just to the panel, but do you think public safety, 107 makes any sense for public safety, or there has to be something altogether different, which makes it their life easier, much easier than these restrictions, but at the same time, integrates training, certification, part of that whole model, because we are talking about public safety who are out to protect us, out to make the whole like search and rescue, and they're into operations like emergency response and everything, and we are trying to compete that same level of pilot with someone who's taking pictures for real estate or something like that. Is that makes any sense? In the long run, do you think a need for that change should be there?
I think it's a good question.
So I've seen one thing on that, and I've talked to a lot of public safety agencies, and what I kind of see in a practical form right now is that local public safety agencies either do a lot of training. If you're LAFD, you've invested heavily in training your fire department to use drones, right? Because the difference is you can't really say, okay, if you're a policeman, you don't necessarily want someone who is not a policeman on your involved in your operation right then, right? So in some cases, they really have a need to train their existing personnel to be drone pilots. They can't take a drone pilot and say, okay, now you're a cop for today, right? That just doesn't work. So that is a shift. And as drones become more automated, maybe that training looks a little bit different than a standard pilot training. But what I've been seeing a lot more of in things like accident reconstruction and search and rescue operations, and operations where you don't necessarily need to have the training of a law enforcement officer, I'm seeing a lot of partnerships. Out in Nevada, Sundance Media is working with the Nevada Police Department, and they're doing their, crime scene documentation and things like that, sort of after the fact, where you're doing accident scene documentation and so forth. Really useful stuff, but I'm seeing a lot of partnerships for those applications.
Miriam, with partnerships, doesn't it mean that require a budget and everything? So how does an agency fulfill that requirement? Because they need Part 107 to move with the operations. And a lot of times there are a lot of states that don't really do a lot to provide funding. And I know Riley himself and even Paul and all who are working with public safety have to cut profits out or overlook profits to just go and help an agency out. But isn't this something like a state responsibility?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a problem, and I think that there isn't a well-defined and well-documented precedent of how to handle the problem. I think, right now, agencies are sort of handling it on a one-off situation based on who's in their area and who they know and who they've reached out to and what funding is available to them. So, I mean, you make a good point. Right now, there's not a really good procedure and a precedent for how to handle this.
So something to put into that, and this is why I brought that topic up, is because we are in AUVSI North Carolina. We're working on outreach initiative where we are trying to focus on all the public safety agencies in North Carolina and connect them with the small businesses in their neighborhood or their county. We are trying to make sure that the small businesses can provide whatever resources or help or whatever training they can during their off hours or during normal hours, or if there's a revenue involved in it. But what we are trying to see here is how small businesses, mid-sized businesses can play a role to educate their public safety agencies, make sure that they've got the right education, training, because end of the day, when they have to purchase the drone or something, they could always reach out to the vendors who are selling these drones. So that is where we, as a chapter, we thought about this outreach initiative, and Nicole has been putting together that. She's been reaching out to agencies, finding out who has a drone program, who doesn't have it. But comes back to small businesses, mid-sized businesses, and the public safety can all somehow come together and help each other out. Because I know that as a company, if a public safety agency reaches out to me, I will go and help them out. Maybe there's no money involved in it at times. There's no profit or anything in it. But it's end of the day is if it's your county, your city, or your neighborhood, there's an agency, I think I would want to keep a good relation to make sure that they are doing the right job.
To give you guys, you mentioned that there's not a really strong example of an organization that's doing this well. I'd like to point to the North Texas Public Safety UAS response team. I think has been a really phenomenal kind of trailblazer in that area. They are an NGO, so they're like a nonprofit group that is comprised of UAS professionals who work with, multiple different municipalities, fire departments, police, and then some that are, just volunteer. And they have a very, very strong, training and self-certification process. And they work closely with multiple different municipalities across North Texas to provide UAS services specifically geared towards, those areas that are maybe smaller and couldn't service that type of demand on their own. And so they've done a really good job here in North Texas. And I think that
we got something similar, Jonathan, not similar, but Riley is the director of NC Public Safety Drone Academy. Riley, you want to mention about how you're providing that free education to agencies?
Sure, it's very similar to what Jonathan said. For those of you who don't know us, I am the director and program manager for the North Carolina Public Safety Drone Academy. And what we did was 4 years ago, embedded ourselves into the North Carolina Community College system. And in doing so, we knew that if we embedded ourselves into the college system, all the training for UAS for public safety across the state would be done tuition free. So all public safety and emergency service members across the state could take any of our training tuition free. They would get in-service credit hours and training credit hours for that by the state. So that's the reason we went with the community college system. And what we're doing is the community college system was generous enough to provide us a command center. So we have a large command center. We're also on call, so we are activated by the state, by Emergency Management, Department of Transportation, Division of Aviation. We are activated by those three entities. So we do respond to calls, and we go out and service any law enforcement, search and rescue, anybody public safety, emergency service based, free. And we try to bring where we're a little different is it's not going to be me and another guy standing in front of the class or outside doing all the training all day, every day. We bring a host of subject matter experts from our state and other states in to teach these subject matter classes. So if I have bomb guys who we deal a lot with recently, if we have bomb techs that say, hey, we want to bring somebody in that we can do UAS operations, we will bring in a subject matter expert in UAS bomb and or somebody from the military, and we will bring those guys in to train those. And again, it's just a service that we're providing free, and we're growing. We're doing a lot right now, and we've got a lot of support over the years, over the past 4 years from industry leaders and things like that, because we're not looking for anything. We're not looking for to make money off this. We're just trying to make North Carolina a safer, more educated place as far as UAS operators. So you're seeing that a lot in the community college system. You're starting to see a lot of UAS programs sprout up over the past 4 years within the community college system and the university system. So that's just real quickly, that's just a little highlight of what we do.
And I think small businesses that are on this call and also they know of, this is a great opportunity for you to connect with your community college systems, find out if there are certification classes or stuff that they can teach, put together. Sometimes some of these community colleges would not have a program, and as a small business you could be hired. I think it's the community college system has got a business initiative or something. Small business initiative, and you can provide services to community colleges. And think about it, basically every county there's a community college, so you have so many community colleges, and if you're part of that, you could connect with your public safety agencies, take upon your responsibility to educate them, train them. So if the state needs to take actions or take this seriously, that their agencies need this financial support and training, everything, as a part of that state, we can ourselves do our job to make sure they are proficient and good enough. Because I've seen state to state, the level of training is very different. Some states are lucky to have good organizations, good companies to help out, but then there are states where it's like you find you do everything on your own. And I know agencies that have done training using YouTube videos. And that's still scary. When you talk about 2020, you still have to look at YouTube to learn. It's like someone told me, how to do this, and I'm like, no. It's like, you just go to YouTube and you'll just search it. And I'm like, no, I'm paying you to teach me. I don't want to go to YouTube and learn this. So it's something to put together. We have 5 minutes remaining. Time passes very fast. It's already close to end. Is there something specific that anyone has that we need to answer? But we'll continue this conversation again end of next month. But I would like to give this last 5 minutes to our Lone Star team to just blow our minds off beyond that metal card. What else they have there that we should they have been I was having a discussion with Adrian. They've been in existence for over 8 years now, and what their chapter has been doing, it's a good lesson for us because we are still new. So Adrian, it's all yours and your team's time now.
Thank you so much, Darshan. We want to just go over a few events that we've been very fortunate to host this year. Obviously, Exponential will be coming to Dallas. We also have Inner Drone, December 15th through the 17th, will be hosted in Dallas. We have, I believe, the Energy Drone and Robotics Coalition. There is the Energy Drone and Robotics Coalition will have their virtual summit July 14th through the 16th. And then there'll be an in-person conference November 10th through the 11th. Also want to mention the FAA UAS Symposium that's coming up July 8th and 9th. And then there'll be another program August 18th through the 19th. For those of you who are interested in the defense or military side of things, AUVSI will be hosting September 8th a virtual symposium. Highly recommend that. That's where all the cool new toys come out. Obviously, the military gets the cool stuff, and then 10, 15, 20 years down the road, we get a sneak peek out of it. So, and yeah, that's pretty much everything I got. And I also wanted to thank our team at First Eyes. They've been recognized as to receive or nominated for the AUVSI Award of Excellence. If anyone is familiar, First Eyes is a company based out of Tyler, Texas. They've built a platform similar to a box where when anyone calls 911, this box would deploy a drone and assess the area for what response would be needed, whether hazmat needs to be responding or a bomb squad or a SWAT. So a huge shout out to First Eyes and their team on their nomination. And Jennifer, Jonathan, if you have anything to add, take it away.
Happy to be here. Thanks.
Yeah, I've got nothing exciting going on.
Perfect. Well, this wraps us up. Please consider joining our Facebook pages, NCAUVSI and the Lone Star chapters. You can find us doing a quick search. We will be getting this video edited. You won't see some of the preliminary. We're going to cut all that out and get it edited nicely. Darshan hates seeing his picture up as the primary thumbnail. But hopefully we'll have that up by mid of next week. It depends on when I can get the recording from our AUVSI Nation, our chapter representative, and Amanda Bernhardt. We'd like to thank her too for allowing us to host the Zoom session. So notices.
So basically we'll be wrapping it up, but I don't know who all are going to be staying back. Feel free to stay back, and use the time. We have time till 6:30, but if you have something specific to discuss, you can continue using. I have to take my parents out, so I'll be leaving at 6.
All right. We will have our next educational series next month, so please follow that. And then our Let's Talk Drones episode 3 will be the last Friday of July. So please join us. Then again, we'll have those links up for registration on our Facebook page. So any future topics, if you'll email us at ncauvsi@gmail.com, we will get that so we can get the people on discussion for us. So have a great day. Hang around and talk if you like.
Take care, everyone.
Have a good weekend.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Adrian, thank you, and thank you, Jennifer and Jonathan.
Appreciate you, Darshan. Have a great weekend.
And Brian.
You too, everyone. Take care.